Hey guys, this is Matt with Fablicator, and today I'm going to briefly go over a few of the basic features that are essential to know to use your Fablicator 3D printer. I'm going to keep this video quick and simple. I'll start out by explaining the disable switches on the front of the machine, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the commands within the Fablicator program. So here on the front of your Fablicator, there are two disable switches. The one on the left is labeled XYZ, and the other on the right side is labeled E. We'll talk about the XYZ switch first. What this does is it disables the motors that control the axes of the Fablicator, allowing you to move them manually by hand. Using the X-axis as an example, you can see that when the switch is turned off, you cannot manually move the X-axis by hand. After disabling the motors using the switch, the X-axis will slide freely by hand to the left and the right. And here's the Y-axis moving forward and back. And the Z-axis, which moves up and down. The second disable switch on the right-hand side is labeled E, and what this switch does is disables the motors of the extruder on your machine. The extruder is the part that drives the filament down through the nozzle. As you can see, when this switch is on, the filament driver will spin freely. When this switch is not turned on, it cannot be moved by hand. Using this switch allows you to push filament down into the nozzle by hand before you start a print. Now I'll run you through a few of the most important commands in the Fablicator program. These are essential to using your Fablicator 3D printer. The first of these is the Home button. What this will do is send each of the axes back to their initial position. This is known as homing. This is the place from which they begin a print, as each print homes before it starts. There are also 3 buttons surrounding this circle here, which can be used to home just one axis individually. They are each labeled for the axis that they will home, X being the left and right axis, Y being the forward and back axis, and Z being the up and down axis. Next, we'll look at the buttons that you can use to move the axes from within your Fablicator program. Keep in mind, none of the 3 axes should be moved using these commands until you have first homed them. This circle contains 4 separate rings of commands leading out from the center. Each one corresponds to one of these 4 numbers on the upper right-hand side. What those numbers stand for is the number of millimeters you will be moving an axis when you click on one of these controls. Each of the 4 sections around the circle is labeled with the axis that it controls. The plus sign and the minus sign stand for the direction that the axis will move. So for example, clicking the X plus button on the outermost ring, labeled 100, will move the X-axis 100 millimeters to the right. Clicking the X minus command on the ring labeled 10 will move it 10 millimeters back to the left. And the same is true for the Y-axis controls, with the plus commands moving your bed forward and the minus commands moving it backwards. On this strip along the right side, we have controls for the Z-axis. They work the same as the X and Y-axis controls, omitting only the 100 millimeter button. These enable you to control the up and down motion of the Z-axis. Another useful set of commands are the buttons that control the extruder and bed temperatures. You can use the buttons labeled Set on the right side here to manually heat the bed or the nozzle. This can be useful when you want to change the filament on your printer or make sure that it is extruding filament properly. Using this drop-down menu, you can choose the temperature to heat them to. And using the off button, you can turn them back off and allow them to cool. The extrude and reverse buttons just above there control the nozzle. They should only be used when the nozzle is heated to a sufficient temperature and will not work when the nozzle is not heated. Clicking extrude will extrude filament through the nozzle, and clicking reverse will pull the filament up out of the nozzle. This enables you to feed a new filament into your nozzle while it's still heated. Thanks for watching this video, and please feel free to contact us with any problems or questions.